Really an absolute pleasure. We've known each other for just under 40 years, believe it or not. It's a couple of years, and it is really always an honor on any of our programs and any of the things that we have. It's always an honor for us to actually always welcome you with everything that you have done and accomplished. And really, I really just felt that this was, everything has its time and we never know when. So I thought when it was, I phoned and I said, okay, Chaya, are you free to join us this week? And it is really an absolute pleasure and an honor. Yes, you can get the link from me later with absolute pleasure. And it's really a pleasure and an honor. And I just want to say that we're going to hear really more from Rebbetzen Levine, or Chaya as we would like it. But what Chaya has done for the Jewish women's world of the Kiruv world and Neve Yerushalayim, and supporting all the teachers who have come through the system and those that are just there that are teaching and spreading Torah. Really, we just wanted to say, I want to say on behalf of everyone who gains from all of them, a huge thank you to you, including being there for Ner Le'Elef when our daughter was learning and studying as well. So I'm going to hand over to you because everybody has enough of me in a general sense.
I don't think anyone could get enough of you, Joanne.
Thanks.
Okay. And I thank you for inviting me. And I really want to thank everybody who has their camera on so that I can see them, because it's a really great thing to see people. I think it's one of the things about COVID is it's given us appreciation for seeing people's faces. In Israel, we have to walk around with our masks on all the time. Sometimes you can't, somebody says hello to you, you're not even sure who they are, and it takes you, a minute. So it's beautiful to be able to actually see people and see your faces and teach people who are not just on the in black boxes. Okay, so we're going to be talking about how words create our world. When I grew up, the common educational thing we were taught about words were sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never harm you. I don't think anyone believes that anymore today. I think the power of I think the media, the social media has trained us how totally damaging words can be. I think that for most people, if you don't remember, if you fell and scraped your knee when you were 10, but you might remember something negative that somebody said to you. You certainly remember, most of us certainly can feel the pain of a negative statement or something negative that somebody said, more than a lot of the physical things. So we really have to know that words have the ability to hurt us and are a real thing, because one of the things we tend to say is, we're just talking. I was just talking. And we kind of have this feeling that speech is not real. It's not a real thing. Now in Torah, the word for speech is, one of the words is dibur. And the root of dibur is davar, a thing. Speech is a real thing, okay? In other words, the Torah view of speech, right, is that it's a real thing. And really, we spend a lot of time talking, okay? And however important a word is in a language, that's how many words there are for that in that language. Think about how many words there are for speech in Hebrew. And each one has a different nuance. There's, Lamor, Vayikra, Haggadah, right? Lasaper, okay? Ledaber. And then we have Lahala, L'shabeach, which are different forms of speech. We have many, many words for speech. And really, speech is the definition of man. It actually says that when God created man, right? It says in Bereshis, Vayifach ba'apav nishmas chayim, he created man as a living being, And Unclus translates that, Targum Unclus translates that as Ruach Mimalala, a speaking being. The definition of a human being is that they have the ability to speak. So whatever people say about dolphins being able to speak or animals, it's not the type of communication and speech that we're talking about. Because for a human being, part of what makes speech so powerful, right, is that it's the expression of our soul. Now, I'm looking at all of you, right? Those of you who are kind enough to share your screen with me, right? And there's somebody named Jenny, and she's smiling at me, right? Now, she could be smiling at me because she's enjoying, and she could be smiling because there's somebody in front of her, in front of my screen, who's jumping up and down and doing something funny. I have no way of knowing that, right? Unless you express it in your speech. So really what speech is you're taking thought, yeah, which is a soul aspect, and making it physical by speaking. Okay, physical therapists, speech therapists will actually tell you that the way that, and I know this because I have a hoarse voice and I've tried speech therapy, right, is that your breath, the way you make sound, and singers know this, is by the breath going through your body. It's literally, in order to speak, your breath, your neshama, your neshima, your breath travels through your body to create the sound. So it's making physical the abstract thinking. And it has a certain soul power. And that's what makes one of the aspects that makes speech so powerful. Okay. Now, I just have to say this, 10 lines of speech were given to the world, 9 were given to women. That makes us according to Hashem, we're the communicators. He gave us the job to be the best communicators and the people with the most. Going to China? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So we have to know as women, right? And it's interesting because we know that Esther Hamalka, right? We just had Purim. I know it seems like forever ago. It wasn't so long ago in Israel because we actually had Purim Mishulash. So we actually had Purim on Sunday. So it was actually still this week. Okay. How did Esther save the Jewish people? Right? By being quiet, by not speaking, and then speaking at the right time. Okay, so knowing how to use that speech, and also we're going into Pesach. One of the things that saved the Jewish people, one of the merits that they had was they didn't change their language because they understood that the language is the expression of the soul and that each word is a representation of a concept. Okay, now what really gives speech its total strength is that speech is the power of creation. How did Hashem create the world? He said, Vayihi or. It keeps saying, and Hashem said, let there be light. And there was light. And Hashem said, let the waters divide, right? And Hashem said, and every time Hashem said it, he changed creation. What we have to understand and learn from this is that speech is the power of creation. Okay? And really, it has the power to, just like Hashem used it to create the world, actually, speech is what creates our reality and changes our world as well. And I want to look at that in 3 areas, right? There are 3 levels. One is interpersonally, which is the most obvious to all of us. The second is internally, our self-talk. And the third is our ability spiritually and our ability to speak to God. Okay? So I'm going to start with the easiest, most obvious one, which is the interpersonal between people. And we know that in relationships, speech has the ability to make connection or destroy connection. Let's just start with saying hello, greeting somebody. The minute you greet somebody, you acknowledge that they're there, right? It's actually a mitzvah. You know that it's a mitzvah to say hello to people. It's right. It's the mitzvah of called she'elat shalom, greeting another person, because you acknowledge their existence and you make a connection. Okay, and people don't like to be ignored, right? If somebody just walks past you, and there's somebody you know, and they don't say hello, you feel she didn't say hello to me. She didn't notice me, right? Okay, so when we speak, we have the power to encourage or discourage people. We can thank people or we can complain to people, right? Every single aspect, we can compliment people, right? People love a compliment, okay? If I say to you, Miriam, I love the color of what you're wearing. It's great. Okay, Miriam Walensky, I don't know you, but I see her, right? It's like, it's so bright, it's so beautiful. Look how she's smiling, everybody. Anyone who could see, right? Everybody loves a compliment. It makes people feel good. Do people like to be criticized? No way, right? Okay, right? Expressions of caring and love versus yelling at people, right? Tone of voice, okay? And also, speech is the way that we share ideas. We can express ourselves. We can share our feelings. We can also share information. Okay, so all of these allow for positive creation, self-development, right? Developing our world. Okay, humor and good cheer, right? Cheering somebody up with a good joke, or a joke could be a very negative, mean jibe at somebody, right? So each part of our speech is something that we can use to create these connections, build these connections, or destroy them. And like everything else, we have halacha to guide us, okay, in this. So, okay, I'm not here to teach the halachas. I'm here I want to go through these just to give us a different vision of like, how do these aspects of halacha build our world or destroy our world? Okay, so let's take, again, I talked about Sheila Shalom, but let's take Onas Devarim, okay? Speaking negatively about another person, right? Hurtful speech. Onas Devarim is when we speak in a not nice way, or we use nicknames, or we say things that are hurtful, right? And we understand that that is going to, Onas Devarim is something that we understand disconnects us from people and makes negativity. Let's go further and talk about Lashon Hara for a minute. Lashon Hara is saying something that is true and negative about another person, okay? And, people always say, but it's true. Why shouldn't I say it if it's true, okay? And what I always tell people when I'm teaching this is that everybody is wonderful. Hashem created all of us. Every single person has neshama. Every single person has positive qualities. We all have things that are great about us, right? And we all have imperfections and things that are not so great. And really, every single person, like when you're looking at me, I want you to look at me and see what's good in me. If I'm wearing a beautiful outfit, I don't want you to notice the one teeny stain I have on my left shoulder. I want you to see all the beautiful part of my outfit. When we're looking at a person and we see we focus on the negative qualities, it trains us to focus on what's negative in people and blinds us from seeing what's positive in people. Okay? And that changes our world because again, we're seeing people we're looking for what's negative as opposed to what's positive. In the same way, richilut, talking behind each other's back. Okay, everybody knows that there's nothing that breaks down trust more than when people talk about each other behind their backs. I've had so many students, I've had so many, Bali Tshuva come to my house. And I'm just going to say that one of the things they've repeated over and over to me is something that we often don't think about as religious people, but people have often said to me, I feel so safe when I'm in your home. And I was trying to figure out what creates that safety. They said, you know what I realized? Realized that you don't talk about people in your house. You don't talk about people behind their back. I don't think when I walk out the door, I wonder what they said about me. And I have a cousin who works in a very high level pharmaceutical area, okay, where she works for all of the big companies, and pharmaceuticals are big today because of the vaccines, right? She's one of the people that checks a vaccine or medication to make sure that it's really not harmful when it's in the scientific stage. And she told me, and it's something we're actually seeing because we're seeing how many vaccines they've been able to put out in a way for the COVID, right? That really they have the ability today to find the cure to any illness, okay? Again, scientifically, they don't run the world, they're not God, but scientifically, in terms of their knowledge, they could come up to, you know what prevents them? The inability to work together. She said, because people are scared because there's so much, backstabbing and they can't trust each other, which is also the concept of motzei sod, right? Which is keeping a secret. If somebody says to you, don't tell anybody, but I'm going to get engaged tonight, right? I'm going out on that last date and I hope to get engaged, right? Don't tell, because what if it doesn't come through? Okay? Somebody tells you something negative about themselves in confidence. Okay? All of the laws are created, motzi shemra, character defamation, right? Now, we'd all like to think that we're good people, right? But think about it. All those, when you're at the grocery store and they have those magazines, somebody said, whenever I ask, I say, does anyone, when I'm not teaching on Zoom and it's easier for people to raise their hand and talk, right? I'll say, how many people here like to gossip? Nobody will say they like to gossip, right? Nobody will say that they would do character defamation. Then I say, how many of you like reading those stories about the movie stars, okay? And, this one got divorced and that, right? Or the politicians. And then everybody kind of says, well, of course they like to read those. Well, why? Because you're taking somebody who's great, right? When you see greatness, when you see people who've achieved something great, they could be role models. They could be people we emulate. But that's hard work. We have to work on ourselves to become great and to emulate other people. It's much easier to just bring people down to size and make them small. And that's what Motzi Shemra is, right? It's we bring people down instead of raising people up in our world. Okay? And there's also Dober Emes, speaking honestly, right? All of these halachas, if we follow them properly, right, help us create trust in a world of focusing on the positive and positive relationships. And not keeping them creates the opposite, the mistrust, okay, the exaggeration, the not being able to believe people, okay, all of these create that. I'm just going to mention this because I don't know, in England and other places, in Israel, we have to wear masks everywhere we go, outside, inside, any place public, we have to wear a mask today. And you're not likely to scream Lashon Hara through a mask, okay? And it gives such a different vision. Like I said before, you're suddenly and also because of social distancing and not being able to see people, not being able to be near people, I feel like it's given us a new appreciation and a new desire to create the kind of unity and the kind of connection that people are looking for. And at the same time, all of the discussion about should you vaccinate or not, and people who don't wear masks and people who do, can create so much distance. And part of what we really want to work on is creating those positive connections, creating that trust, creating a world where we're safe and we can grow and we can develop. I want to take a minute now and talk about our internal self-talk, okay? Because the Sifsei Chaim says that our brains work all the time, okay? We can't, Baruch Hashem, if you're alive and you're thinking and you're well, your brain is working all the time. And our brain works in speech. Okay, and we're talking to ourselves continuously, whether we realize it or not. Okay.
Tippy, is it us or Chaya?
Okay. I'm back.
Okay,
I don't know
great.
it.
That's okay. It's part of our life on Zoom. You know, we
Right.
all have it very hard when it comes to these Zoom things, let me tell you.
Yes. Okay. Technology is great when it works, right? Okay. So self-talk, internal self-talk, noticing what we say. Okay. So let me give you this example. I woke up, it didn't happen today, but it could have happened today, right? I woke up 10 minutes late. I hadn't put my clothes out the night before, which I tend to do if I'm rushing for the morning, and I'm not a bright good morning person. Okay. So I didn't put out my clothes. And then when I went to get my outfit, I realized that I hadn't done laundry recently enough to have the kind of clothes I really like. So I didn't have my ideal outfit. I went to get myself a cup of coffee. I spilled my coffee. I now had to change my skirt. Okay. And I was now even later. I got out of the door. I ran out. I realized I forgot my lunch. It was too late to go back and get it. Okay. Ready? Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I woke up 10 minutes late. I'm so lazy. I can't believe that I overslept today. I have such a busy day. It's going to be such a hard day and such a bad day. Okay, let me get dressed. Oh my gosh, I did not put out my clothes. I'm such a procrastinator. I'm always procrastinating. Why do I do this? Okay, and I don't have something that I really like to wear. It's going to be a terrible day. I could just tell it's going to be such a bad day and I'm going to look ridiculous. Okay, let me at least get a cup of coffee. I like coffee. Coffee. Oh my gosh, I spilled my coffee. I am the biggest klutz in all of Har Nof. I cannot believe this. Okay, let me change my outfit. Well, if I thought I looked bad before, I really look ridiculous now. I can't believe I'm even going to go to work wearing this, and I'm going to go out. Everybody's going to like stare at me. Okay, let me just get out the door. I forgot my lunch. I'm going to starve. This is going to be the worst day. I'm the klutziest person in all of Har Nof. Okay, ready? Sample number 2. I overslept by 10 minutes. I'm going to feel so rested today. I really needed that 10 extra minutes of sleep. You know, I have so much to do today. It's going to be such a busy day. Let me get out of bed. Okay, look, I did not do laundry. You know, this is going to really motivate me. Today is going to be a great day. I am going to get dressed, okay, in something else, okay? And I'm gonna make sure I get the laundry done. Let me go get a cup of coffee. Oh my gosh, I spilled my coffee all over my skirt. Isn't it great that I spilled my coffee on my skirt before I took it to the dry cleaner? I'm like the most together women in all of Har Nof. Okay, let me get dressed. Oh, look at this. This doesn't even match. You know, it's a good thing I work at Neve. I'm going to tell them it's like artsy. The girls are going to love it. And if anyone asks me on the street, I'm going to tell them it's the latest fashion. It just came from America. I'm just so together. Oh, I forgot my lunch. You know what? I wanted to start a diet. This is going to be such a good day. Okay, ready? Tell me now. Who, and you don't really have to tell me, but just think for yourself. Okay, who related? Now, they're obviously very extreme examples, but who related to the first example more? Okay, and who are the second example and was kind of smiling and thinking, oh my gosh, no one ever talks that way or thinks that way, right? But really, why not? right? We don't have to think the first way. It's just that our brain, if it's trained to think negatively and we're not paying attention, we'll say such negative things to ourselves. We'll say things that we would never, hopefully, say to anybody else. Okay? It's an unbelievable thing. Okay? And that creates our own internal, and we're living with this internal negativity over and over again. Okay? So recognizing our speech, and also, I can just tell you this as a counselor, it's also what we say then also about other people. Okay? So again, people are looking at me and I could say, I'm going to pick on Rochelle because I know her. So Rochelle, you're like sitting here like this, like, everybody, she's mad at me. I can tell. Wait, oh, look, she's laughing at me, everybody. She's smiling. She's laughing at me. I know that. Hey, do you know how many times we do that? We don't ask the person what they're thinking or what they're feeling, and we just make assumptions because now somebody could be having a bad day. She could have been concentrating deeply, okay? But we will do this. As a counselor, I could tell you that this happens when you have a married couple all the time, right? That's one of them will say, a husband and wife can come in and the wife will start talking and she'll start saying, and my husband is this and he's that and look at him, she'll say, and I'll stop them from talking. I'll say to the husband, what are you thinking? And the husband's like, I'm just trying to follow. I'm just concentrating. Okay? So being aware of what we're saying to ourselves, about others, the judgments we make, okay, makes a very big difference in building our internal world. And I don't think I need to say more about that. So I'm going to go further into talking to Hashem. Okay, it's an unbelievable thing that we have, which is the ability to speak to Hashem. Okay, that ability is something that raises our bar of our speech and raises our world. So I want to take a minute and let's talk for a minute about davening from the siddur. There are two types of prayer, by the way, davening from the siddur and personal prayer. Okay, when we daven from the siddur, one of the things that it does for us is it refocuses our brain. When we make brachas, like any bracha we make, but let's say the morning brachas. When we make the morning brachas, it focuses us on all the little things in our life. Our shoes, for instance. How often do we think about our shoes? Unless they're hurting our feet, right? Or unless we need a new pair. Okay? Shasali kol tzarki. Okay? Pokeach ivarim. When I was younger, I never understood so much, zokef kifufim. But as I got older, right? Matir asurim, getting out of bed, and zokef kifufim. And today, with so many people who are, as we say in Hebrew, more damrun shaman on ECMO machines, lo aleinu, it shouldn't be happening to any of us. We can appreciate every breath, the ability to move, all of the brachas that we make, okay? Then we move on to Psuke de Zimra, which get us to focus on how beautiful our world is and the fact that Hashem created that world. It brings connection. It connects when we daven and we say Psuke de Zimra, when we say Tehillim, we bring Hashem into the physical world. Okay? Our speech does that. Our words do that. Okay? When we say Shema, okay, we are reaffirming so many of the tenets of Emunah, and we repeat them and we say them, and that helps us to integrate and accept. And that's part of Shema, is like I always say, it's the Jewish mantra. Okay? And Shmona Esrei, how many times do we say, if somebody asked us what our real values were, what would we say? World peace, world health, justice. But when I wake up in the morning, I'm not thinking about my bigger values, really. I'm so stuck in pettiness. All I want to do is make myself my cup of coffee, get dressed, put a load of laundry in and get out to work. If I didn't have davening to refocus and get me focused into those values, I might never really focus in on them. So that's what davening from the siddur does for us. Yeah. Okay. And it inspires us in the days that we're uninspired, where we might not daven because we're uninspired. But then there's a different kind of davening, a davening where we're speaking personally to Hashem as if he's our best friend. And I didn't make this up. It's in Bilvavi, it's in Rav Pinkus, where it says that we can speak to Hashem b'tzavta. B'tzavta means like partners, like best friends. You always want to talk to your best friend. You always have something to say to your best friend. You can think you could have spoken an hour ago. Something happens, you want to share it. So we want to share the great things that happen and thank Hashem. We want to share the painful and difficult things. Okay? We know that we have a phone call to make, okay? An important phone call to make. Say a little tefillah before Hashem. I have to give a shir. Hashem, help me find the right words. I'm in Geula, which is a shopping area, if you don't know. Okay, it has clothing stores for women, sneeze clothing. So I'm in Geula. I have 250 shekel in my wallet, and my one good Shabbos dress just got ruined. Hashem, help me find something. I only have 20 minutes. Okay, and Hashem could say no, but he could also say yes. Okay, but it's making that connection through our speech, sharing our personal pain, our personal, which leads me to share the story of how I met my husband. Okay, so and Joanne and I were actually older singles together. I don't know if Joanne was older. I was older. Okay, I was an older single.
I'm gonna say okay with that one.
Okay, I was an older single. I was living in Yerushalayim. I was working in Neve Yerushalayim. Okay, people always say, how old were you? I say, it's not so much, it's not even the age, but just realize this. My entire Beis Yaakov class was married except for me. One girl was married, divorced, and remarried, and I still wasn't married. Okay, so at some point, I kind of gave up hope and decided, like, that's it. I'm not really going to get married. Okay. And maybe I should rethink my life. And, instead of having fun doing Kiruv and Neve Yerushalayim, I should, move on and get a better degree. And I applied to medical school, and then I missed the deadline. So I was accepted for like the following year. So I applied to social work. I was planning to leave Israel. In the meantime, my brother, who's a Rav, went to Diane Fisher's Zatzal and spoke to Diane Fisher about a few halachic things. And then he mentioned that he has, an older sister that's not succeeding in getting married, dating's not going for her. And what should she do? Okay. And Diane Fisher, this is the way my brother describes it, clapped on the table, put his hand down and said, she should go to the kotel and daven 40 days in a row for clarity, right? Because here I was making a decision. Was I going to go back? Was I going to stay? She should go to the kotel 40 days in a row and daven for clarity. Okay. Now, when your older brother tells you something like that, what do? Do you listen? Of course not. Like going to the kotel every day, 40 days, I'm busy. Okay. I didn't listen right away. In the meantime, when I was working in Neve, I had a friend who worked in the office, and I used to always say to her, your husband is such the kind of guy that like I'm looking to marry. Like, doesn't he have any friends? And one day she came in and she said, my husband has this friend. His name is Kalman Levine, and I think it would be a great shidduch for you. And she said, Rebbetzen so-and-so knows him. Go and speak to Rebbetzen so-and-so. Now she mentioned, by the way, 2 Rebbetzens. One of them was not in the school at the time, so I went to the other one. And that Rebbetzen looked at me and said, Kalman Levine? Totally not for you. Totally not. Go out with his best friend, so-and-so. So I went out with his best friend. That did not go. Okay. And so my friend started every day. She was bugging me, like, did you think about Kalman Levine? Did you think about Kalman Levine? I kept saying, no, like, I'm busy, I'm this. Anyway, in the meantime, at that time, Discovery was being started at Aisha Torah. And I had started to go into the old city every day to work. I was working together, Neve and Aish and the Discovery, and I was going into the old city every day. So I figured if I'm going into the old city every day, I might as well, before I go up to Aisha Torah, I'll go down to the Kotel, I'll say a quick prayer. Every day I went down to the Kotel and I would, said a little prayer, asking Hashem to give me clarity about what I should do with my life. And in the meantime, I booked a ticket and, it looked like everything was ready to go. And then it was like a few weeks before I was leaving, and I was at a certain rabbi's house for Shabbos. And he said to me, and he suggested a certain shidduch, and I knew it wasn't a shidduch. And I don't know why I said this to this day. I don't know why I said this, but I remember turning to this rabbi and saying, this guy is not for me. It's just like Kalman Levine. And he said, Kalman Levine, did you ever go out with him? I think it's a great idea. I think you should go out with him. I'm going to set it up and you're going to go out with him tomorrow. And I thought, this is not going to work, but I can't turn this rabbi down. Okay, this is like a rabbi that I was very close to their family. I used to go to them all the time for Shabbos and stuff. I thought I can't possibly turn them down. Okay, so I came home that night and my apartment had been robbed. And had been like, the people thought we were these American girls. We must have money. So they were very upset when they didn't find all our riches. And they broke things and whatever. And my roommate was very upset. And I said to her, listen, I have this date tomorrow. It's going to be a really bad date. We're meeting at the King David Hotel. Afterwards, we're going to go out to the restaurant across the street and we're going to get over this. Anyway, the next night I went on this date, and this was before cell phones, by the way. And this guy was by the way, the person who had told me it wasn't for me kept saying to me, he's so quiet. He doesn't talk. He's been at my Shabbos table so many times, he doesn't say a word. Okay, so I was expecting this very boring, quiet guy. Right? Instead, he was the funniest guy I ever met. He was totally talkative. Okay, we talked so much, I missed, I ended up getting home really late. I forgot to call my roommate, who was totally worried after this whole experience. Okay, and we started going out. Okay, and I had a ticket. I was leaving, and I didn't know what to do, and I was going to the Kotel every day. I was going out at night, okay? And I was, just kind of in this very rushed kind of place. And on the night of the 39th day, okay, I didn't know this, but he decided that he wanted to marry me, okay? And he was going to ask me to marry him, okay? So we went on a date. And in those days, there was this set speech that all the guys always said. And one of the things I liked about him was he didn't say any of these set speeches. He was just very different. So what happened was he started this whole discussion, and he saw that I wasn't responding. I guess what happened is his mashgiach told him, all the girls want to hear this speech. So if you're thinking of getting engaged, you should say this speech, right? But he started to say the speech, and I was not happy. So he stopped and he said, let's not talk about this anymore. Let's go to the Kosel. Okay. So we were near the Kosel. We went down to the Kosel, and as we were walking down, there was an area where you walk down and you see the old city. And he said, let's stop here and look at how beautiful the Kotel is. He said, I wrote a prayer, and I thought the two of us, we could both say this little tefillah together. And he pulls out these two teeny little pieces of scraps of paper. And in it in Hebrew was a Yehi Ratzon for what? Clarity. It was in Hebrew, a word for word translation of the tefillah that I'd been saying for I had said it for 38 days by then. Okay. So that was oh my gosh, and then we went down to the Kosel and we davened. Okay. And I didn't know this about my husband, but he was an unbelievable davener, and he davened for a long time. Okay. So the clarity I got on night 39 was, forget it. This guy is not for you. Forget it. He made the speech. He's like, I thought he was different. He's like all the other guys. Forget it. Okay. Not interested. Okay. So I was waiting, and then he was davening for a long time, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so inconsiderate. He's davening for such a long time, and I'm waiting, and it's so late. I have to be at work tomorrow. Anyway, afterwards, he said, let's go to the King David Hotel, because he had this whole thing planned so that he was going to ask me to marry him. Now, don't ask me why I went with him to the King David Hotel, even though I had decided I might never want to see him again. And don't ask me why, but he chickened out, and he didn't ask me to marry him that night. And the next day, we were supposed to go out, and he called me, okay? And he was calling from a payphone. I actually had a phone in my house, and he said to me, and he called late, a little bit late, and I wanted to tell him that I never want to see him again, and I'm not going to meet him. And he heard it in my voice, and he said, I hear that something's bothering you. He said, I hope it's not that I was late, because I saw that you were upset by what I said in the restaurant. I went to the Rosh Hashiva to speak to him, and I wanted to talk to you about what he said. I was so impressed that he'd gone to the Rosh Hashiva to speak to him that I decided to go out with him again. So that day we went out. We actually spent like a good part of the day together. And I changed my mind, about never seeing him again. And I was, I wouldn't say I was ready to marry him, but I definitely was very interested. And as we were on the bus going home, okay, we were in Geula. We were in a bus that went by Geula, which is where that rabbi that I lived was. And my husband, he looked at me and he said, I want to ask you something serious. And I actually thought he was going to tell me a joke. And he looked at me and he said, when do you think you're going to be ready to say yes? And I said, what? And he said, this is my stop, and I have to get off right now, because otherwise I'm going to miss the last Mariv. And when I speak to people, people always say, how do you know things when you date? I say, you see everything, you just don't know what you're seeing. Like my husband was somebody that never missed minyan. Okay. He asked me to marry him, and he didn't even wait for the answer, because he was going to miss the last minyan. Okay. So he gets off the bus. I'm totally confused. I don't know what to do. I realize I'm near these rabbis' house. His name is Rabbi Rappaport. And I walk into their house. Okay. I go to their house, and his wife, who's Israeli, what happened is, because I changed my plans, I forgot to let work know I wasn't coming in. So his wife, who's Israeli, and her name is Tzippi, looks at me and she says, where were you? Where were you? You didn't go to work today. Everybody's been looking for you. Nobody knows where you are. And I looked at her and I said, Tzippi, I think this guy asked me to marry him, but I'm not sure. And she looks at me and she says, Chaya, no wonder you're not married if you can't even figure out if they're trying to you or not. Okay. So I walk into the living room, I sit down, and who's there? A friend of mine who's also hangs out at the Rappaports. And I sit down and I say, Kalman Levine. And she says to me, Kalman Levine, he's a great guy. He's a great guy. Go out with him. She didn't realize I was dating him. She thought, and she starts telling me all these great things about him. Now, also, I just want you to realize something. You realize that when he asked me, it was the night of the 40th day. You get that? Did everybody catch that? Okay. So on the 39th day, when he chickened out, my clarity was, forget it. On the 40th night, he asked me on the night of the 40th day. Okay. I was totally I didn't know what to do. I stayed up all night. I called my brother in America, my mother, I stayed up all night. And in the morning, it was the 40th day. It was a Friday. I went to the Kosel. Okay. Went to the Kosel. I was sleep deprived, totally confused, didn't know what to do. I I davened for clarity, and all of a sudden it was like one of these like cloudyish days. All of a sudden, the sun like came out from the clouds, and it became really clear to me, Mary Coleman Levine. Like, don't go back to America, Mary Coleman Levine. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm hallucinating. So I decided, what do you do when you're in a quandary? You open your Tehillim. I opened my Tehillim. What did it open to? Lamed Gimel, Lamed Daled. Lamed Gimel is all about Emunah and Hashgacha of Hashem. Lamed Daled, besides saying about 10 times that Hashem answers your prayers, has the pasukim, Mi ha'ish hachafetz chaim ohev yamin liros tov netzor l'shon chameirah. One of the things that was very dear to my husband was Shmiras Halashon. And when we were dating, this was not a popular mitzvah that there were all these classes about, and everybody was learning. It was not a popular mitzvah. And it was very important to him. And he told me when we were dating that he would only marry somebody who would be committed to having a home where we were really careful about our speech and we learned Shmiras Halashon. That was a very important thing to him. So here I saw this and I thought, oh my gosh, like Hashem is sending me this message. Okay. I back away from the kotel. Who do I bump into? One of my other friends who's older and just got engaged. Okay. Hint number 3 for people who aren't who are slow. Okay. I meet this friend and we're talking and I tell her that I have to go to Geula to pick up something for my brother for Shabbos. And she says to me, great, she's also going to Geula. So we go into the Geula neighborhood and we're walking and we're talking. And you know when you're walking and you're talking and you're not paying attention? Okay, so what happened? I was walking and talking and not paying attention, and something very embarrassing happened in the middle of this very ultra Orthodox, very religious Hasidic neighborhood. Okay, I bumped into a guy. Okay, but smack like this, like this. Okay, guess who the guy was? Coleman Levine. So it was like I said, okay, Hashem, I got it. Clarity, Mary Coleman Levine. Okay. So we got engaged. That Shabbos, actually, we went to my brother's, we went to Rabbi Refson's, we made a l'chaim, we called our parents on Sunday. Okay. I was supposed to leave, by the way, on Monday. So on Sunday night, my friends planned a surprise goodbye party. And for me, and I walked into the surprise party and they said, surprise. And I said, surprise, I'm a Kala, I'm coming back. Okay. And so Baruch Hashem, that is how personal prayer, that was my lesson on the importance of our tefillas and personal prayer and how Hashem can really listen to us and help us out and give us clarity. And thank God, I was zocha to really have a beautiful marriage with my husband for 29 years. We have 9 children, b'li ein hara. He learned Torah, he taught Torah, he gave vadim about Shmiras Halashon and character improvement. I worked in Kiruv all the years. We raised our family. All of that was until November 18th, 2014, which is Chav Hei Cheshvan in the Jewish date. It was a Tuesday morning. I had come back from America on Thursday. I'd been at a conference and I'd come back. It was the first day I didn't have jet lag. I was up on time. I was together. I was standing in my kitchen. My husband's lunch was ready. My 11-year-old son walked in and said to me, he had a broken arm. He said, Mommy, right, we're getting my cast off today finally. And I said, right. And just then there was the loudest siren I have ever heard. Okay. Now I live in Har Nof. It's a very residential neighborhood. But we're surrounded by the forest. And the first thing I thought of was there must be a fire. So I said to my son, run quickly and see, the fire must be very close to our house. My son goes to the porch and he screams. So I run out and I see a scene that was not describable and not comprehensible to me. meaning I see people running in the street. I see them gunning down people in front of the shul. I see people screaming. I don't know what it is. I can't comprehend. I pull my son in. It was the only thing I could think of. I remember thinking, did these guys try stealing a Sefer Torah? Like, what's going on? And the phone started ringing. And the first person who got through was my daughter, who lives in the South, actually in Ofakim. She had been taking her daughter to an appointment, and she calls, she said, Mommy, there was a pigua, terrorist attack in Reuben's shul. Tell me that Abba wasn't there because he davened nates. It said Abba wasn't there, he davened nates. I like, and I, in the back of my head, okay, I knew that my husband davened nates. He wasn't in that minyan, okay, but he had said to me at night, the night before, it's actually the last words he said to me was, I have a shaila to ask Rav Reuben. Ready? But I want you to hear this, but I'm not going to go to the shul because I didn't finish preparing my vad, and the biggest vad he gave was on Tuesdays. So in my head, I remember thinking, if Hashem wants him to be there, like, he'll be there, but it doesn't make sense that he'll be there. He couldn't be there. And I remember like just going into my daughter's room to make sure she was okay. And then I remember like, I was trying to think who would be in that minyan, and I realized that Chaim Rotman davened in that minyan, and I called their house, and they told me that he was critically ill. And I remember going into my husband's study and to say Tehillim, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like my husband used to give this is like the loudest alarm clock. And my husband used to give, whenever Pigua happened, unfortunately, we'd been living in Israel for a long time. This wasn't the first terrorist attack or horrible thing we'd, seen. We lived through the Gulf War, So I remember thinking, like, my husband would give this Pigua speech. And what was the Pigua speech? He would call us together and he would say, it's not about Arabs. It's not about politics. It's about us. He would say, whenever something happens, terrorists try to make the world a dark and scary place, but we can light up the world with mitzvahs and kindness and guarding our tongues and davening and learning Torah. They try to destroy us, but we keep rebuilding. We fight evil with good. And we would think about like what mitzvah or what thing we could do to improve. And I remember thinking, like this was so close to home, that it was in our shul right next to our house. We're going to have to take on something very big. And people were starting to come home, and my neighbors came in and said, did your husband get back? And I was kind of like, no, but we couldn't get through. And I finally thought, let me call my friend who lives next to the shul he davens, because he's probably davening in the shul and he's not coming home. So I asked her to go look in the shul, send one of her boys to that shul to tell my husband that he could come home. And she called me back and said, your husband's not there. So I figured he was on his way home. And when he didn't come home within like a certain amount of time, I realized, oh my gosh, like he's not here. He didn't call me. He's not coming home. That's it. He's not coming home. And I went into my bedroom. I remember telling my kids, like my kids weren't even dressed yet. They were still in their pajamas. Like, go put on an outfit, like something not so nice. I remember going into my room and like thinking, this is like horrible. This is not the script I wrote. This is not happening to me. This happens to other people. Like, this doesn't happen to me. Okay, this happens to people on the West Bank. This doesn't happen in Har Nof. This doesn't happen to me. I remember thinking, like, I want to just sit on the floor and cry. I want to get into bed and never come out. I was like I like it's just indescribable. Okay, and then I realized that like this was a nisayon point. This was a choice point in my life, and I realized that if I did that, then I would be giving up everything my husband and I built for 29 years, and I'd be kind of letting the terrorists win. I would be allowing them to destroy us in our home. I realized that however I respond was going to set the tone for my children. And I realized that whatever that like they couldn't lose their whole world. They couldn't lose their father and their mother in the same day. And I changed my clothes, and I went out, and I wanted to tell my children. And by then, my married children had been called and had come home, and one of my sons came home from yeshiva, and my brother came, and then the Rav came. And I remember we were sitting on the couch, my daughter, my son and I, and my sons were sitting with different people. I remember my daughter, we were sitting on the couch and we were crying. And I remember my daughter looking at me and saying, right, mommy, Hashem won't send us an asylum that we can't handle. If Hashem sent us this, like, we can handle this. And I remember, like, when we were sitting Shiva, like, people were coming in. There were like a lot of interesting responses. There were a lot of people who were asking what happened. I was like, who cares what happened? Like, he's gone. Like, I don't want to focus on what happened in the shul. I don't want to focus on, so many different things. I want to focus on who my husband was and how lucky we were that we could have him. I wanted to focus on, it was an unbelievable thing when we sat Shiva, to see the unity. There were so many people in my house I didn't know, but I was sitting in my living room. I was actually sitting kind of where I'm sitting now. There's a window to my kitchen. Okay. Every morning at 6:00 in the morning, close friends of mine came, because if they came later than that, you couldn't get through on the streets, because there were just so many people sitting Shivas, but we were all so close together. There were so many people. So my friends would come at 6 in the morning to make coffee and make sure that like before minyan, we got coffee, and that after minyan, we got breakfast. So it was like I had these beautiful people taking care of me behind me. I had Klal Yisrael in front of me, being Menachem. Okay, it was like being surrounded in a cloud of chesed. There were people who came and they brought us, there's a candy called Etzba'os. It's chocolate, it's handy. I remember kids came and handed it to my children and said, we're giving you our hand, we're giving you a hand. There were all kinds of amazing chesed and things that people did. I always say we should all have the same unity when we have a simcha, when we're regular, that we had then. Okay. And I remember they came, and one of the organizations came and said, we're an organization for the victims of terror. And I remember thinking, we're not victims. No Jew is ever a victim. We can't choose our circumstances, but we can always choose our responses. And I learned that from my mother, who was a Holocaust survivor. We say she's really a Holocaust hero. And what I realized is the choices we make are the people we become. We can't control what other people do or say, okay? But we can choose how we respond. So when somebody insults us, we can choose to just ignore it. We can choose to greet people and include people, to compliment people. We can choose to not make that nasty comment or share that juicy information that makes us sound so good but could be so hurtful, because what we say really builds or destroys our world. And as women, we have to know this. I want you to know that our prayers, they're stronger than men's prayers. Before he was nifter, Avadia Yosef asked any teacher who's taught for women to please ask all the women who were together to take a minute and pray together for the Geula, because he held that women's prayers are so much stronger than men's. Okay? And we have to know that our prayers really have the power to change the world and bring the Geula. 2 20-year-old terrorists were in the shul for 11 minutes and caused so much destruction. Just think how much joy, light we can bring to our world and how much we can build our world in 11 minutes. 11 minutes. And just maybe if we do that and we really daven and we really think about what we say, we really focus, maybe this year, by the time Pesach comes, not only will COVID be gone, but maybe we'll be eating the Korban Pesach in the Beis HaMikdash this year.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you for listening.